All right, we're live. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another Unlocking Age of Sigmar. So today I have Thomas Lyons, the other half, some might say better half, of the Warhammer Weekly crew. He is now joining us from inside the Weapon X bunker. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
So we are going to talk today about Nergal. And, you know, I've kind of done a little bit of variance on this unlocking. I've been doing lists that people have been sending me with a new series called Build a List. I've been doing unlocking since the very first, release of Age of Sigmar, when I decided I was going to test the shit out of the game. And now we've come around for a full circle, and we're getting into, with General's Handbook, real hardcore matched play type lists. And some of them are mixing and going across sub-factions, sticking within the Grand Alliance, of course, but crossing those boundaries. And some of them are staying right within the lines. And this looks like a list that any of you Chaos players out there, especially if you're interested in Nurgle, this is a series of lists I think you're going to like. And Tom, you seem to have a special place in your heart for Nurgle in general.
Yeah, it could be as much as the fact that my co-host on Warhammer Weekly just utterly despises Nergal, and I love fielding forces that he hates.
Like the dwarves, yes.
As seen by my dwarves, my Chaos dwarves, my High Elves, my Nergal, my Spider Force Goblins. I don't know. I like it. In addition to that, I wanted a green force. I know that sounds terrible, but like in looking at the different like the colors of my different forces, I wanted something that was a little bit different and more, and kind of like earthy tones. And I didn't have anything like that, and so I thought, oh, why not?
So I have never heard somebody decide on the color palette based on what they were concerned about drying up in their paint collection.
No, it was more a. It was more just like I wanted a force. Like I have like certain color schemes, obviously, for each of my forces, and I was like, man, I'd like a green force. And I was thinking through, and so in that vein, Nergal is obviously green. It's funny because a lot of my paint jobs, as people will see coming out, not all of them are green. In fact, I did quite a bit of purple in my green force. But what ended up happening was. I also like forces that are competitive, and Nergal definitely fits that bill for me.
Well, let's hit upon that, because beyond the fact, a lot of people choose lists for different reasons, and although we're talking about matched play, the two of us are also hobbyists. We enjoy painting, we enjoy collecting, we enjoy playing, and we enjoy competing. So it's a spectrum. Am I accurate in saying that? No, knowing you, but maybe the audience not necessarily knowing you.
Yeah. I would say that I am a power gamer. I am
unapologetic.
I am hyper competitive. I like whatever I build, whether it be in an RPG or whether it's a war game, I want it to run like a Corvette. So the question is will it run? Will it run? Will it race? And then does it look good? And so it's a combination of those two things.
Nice.
And yeah.
So when you decided on Nergal, because there's a lot of what I would call, shit kicker type combos or lists or things that we've seen, but I haven't done an unlocking yet with Nergal. I did Nergal, going back before match play when we were first circling to the compendium lists. But there's a whole different there's a whole different dynamic now with Nergal with when it comes to points and various different organizational limits. Have you played with Nurgle a lot since the release of the General's Handbook?
No, I've played a little bit, is what I would say. And right. So,
what's your feel for them?
So it's interesting because I chose this before the General's Handbook came out, and so running pure Nurgle, you have two big hurdles in matched play. One is mobility. You just don't have it. Even if you're running Nurgle Demon, and you're running Rotflies, The problem is that you don't like they have a mobility of like 8, a movement of 8, which is still pretty mediocre. I mean, like an 8
calf movement, yeah.
Yeah, like an 8 fly. But it's like a low calf movement. It's not even like a horse movement. I mean, to be honest, like most horses are 10 to 12 oftentimes. Some are 8. But so like your movement is just terrible. And so to make that worse, your range is also terrible. There's no good range in any of Nurgle. And so you have to go outside of mortal Nurgle units in order to, like, so Rotbringers is, so one of the interesting things about the Force is that it's not Rotbringers, Rotbringers is not the keyword, it's mortal Nurgle.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you'll see as we get to the list that makes a difference, because that actually gives us a lot of options that we didn't previously have.
And I've seen this list. I obviously looked over it when you sent it to me, just getting ready for the show. And how do you gauge this list on the filthy meter?
Not so. It looks filthy, is what I would say.
It looks on paper, yes.
On paper, it looks filthy. The problem is mobility. Mobility is always going to be the issue. And it doesn't have that. In this first list, my 1,000-point list doesn't even have shooting. And so the problem is that it looks filthy, and depending on the scenario of match play, either you're going to win big or you're going to struggle to like. So it is a kind of like go big or go home type of list.
Yeah. So it's not trying to take care of everything. It's just trying to do what it does best.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And for Nergal at the 1,000-point mark, being a hard list is like being a hard force, a survivable force, is what it does well.
Okay.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. I'm just going to qualify for anybody who's a newcomer to this particular show. If you're an old timer coming back from, I'm sorry to say old timer, but hey, I've got the gray hair. But if you're, coming from, departing from Warhammer for either from 8th edition or any earlier editions, and you're just getting into Age of Sigmar, or if you're, an Age of Sigmar player and just starting to get into match play since the release of the General's Handbook, there's force organization limits in terms of the maximums based on points on how many behemoths, which tend to be monsters, but not always. They don't always have the keywords for monsters. For leaders, which are typically your heroes, and there's forced inclusions where you have to take battle line, which are the old core being brought back. And there's other types of limitations as well, which you can go see in the General's Handbook. And what the book basically has a 1,000, 2,000, and 2.5K list segments where they say what those limits and requirements are. We are going to focus on all of them, but just so you know, most of the tournaments that are using match play, even if they comp a little bit, they're typically going 2K. So we'll probably spend the bulk of our time talking about the 2K list. But I want to include 1K and 2.5K, mainly because you may be involved in escalation leagues. You might be playing smaller games. Sometimes these large tables are segmented out for some shops to fit more players and get more games going. But I see a lot of events that are even 1,500 just using the 1K level. So we're going to talk about all these 3 levels. My guest, Tom, has sent me a list with for all of these, and why don't we jump into it?
So what I want to qualify as well is that I've actually built these with an escalation in mind. So as you're built, so the idea is that the 2,000 builds upon what the 1,000 is doing, but branches out in maybe a different way that the 1,000 didn't, like some element that the 1,000 didn't have. Okay. And then when I get to the 2,500, I take away an element and I add in another big element. And so these are, I view these as kind of like puzzle pieces, depending on the event and depending on the circumstances of how to kind of view or field these different forces.
Great. So if you're looking to, if you're getting involved in an escalation league, this could be a really good guide as you get as you build higher. I happen to be running an escalation league now myself, where we're starting actually with starter boxes of around 600 to 650 points, roughly, because some of the boxes are a little bit more and some are less. And then we're going to be adding, up to 200 points each iteration, just to get some locals going. So it's nice to see a progression list like this for anybody who might be getting involved in something like that. Okay, let me go ahead and share the screen, and we'll go take a look at your 1,000-point list. And I'm going to pop in with the War Scrolls at several junctures. So we should be seeing right now. I think I might be getting the hang of this now, Tom. I think we might be seeing the AOS, the Nurgle 1,000-point list, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, take it away. Again, I'm going to pop in with the various different scrolls. So if you don't have them in front of you, I'll try to zoom in so you can read them.
Okay. So different people build lists around different ideas or shticks. I build lists around my generals generally. I find that it helps me kind of focus my ideas. And so with this list, I'm focusing on the Harbinger of Decay. The Harbinger is a really interesting general because he's a mounted mini. He's sitting at 7 wounds. He has a nice round of melee attacks, 3 attacks, 3 up, -1 D3 Ren, with some miscellaneous attacks from his the fly's bite. He has a 4-up ward save against spells, which is a nice kind of benefit, but it's not the end of the day. And he has a nice little like punchy attack against heroes that he can potentially put some mortal wounds on them.
Is that 4-up against the damage from spells or the effects? I didn't read that.
The result of a spell.
Really? Oh, that's much more broad. Yeah.
So if he takes well, let me say that again. No, it's wounds or mortal wounds as the result of a spell.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because if it was the kind of thing where there was like a detriment, like a -1 to hit or something like that.
You can't negate that. I'm sorry to mislead that way.
No. Okay.
It's a 4-up ward against spell damage. So it's kind of like the Chaos Warriors, which are 5/6, only he's 4-up.
Sweet.
But more importantly, his command ability is a ward save bubble that he grants to mortal Nurgle units within 7 inches. That's a 5-up save. Okay? Which nice. You'll notice that he himself is in this bubble.
So he's getting a double save there.
Yes. So when he activates his command ability, he has a 5/6 save against any wounds. And he has in addition to that, also a 4-up save against wounds from spells.
Very nice.
And so he's a great he's a great hero and he's a 4-up save. So he's a great hero for this kind of low 100 level or the 1,000 point force. So augmenting him, I also have a Chaos War Shrine. So what you're going to very quickly see is what's going on here. With the Chaos War Shrine, it's a behemoth, or a behemoth, or whatever you want to say. It's not behemoth. There you go. It's not a hero, but it is marked to a god, so it is also a mortal Nergal unit. Okay, it's sitting at 12 wounds, 4-up save. It has some kind of worthless attacks, whatever. Could you clarify why that's significant to our viewers? Anybody may be new to the idea of not just synergies, but the battalion situation? Yeah, so I'm not actually running any battalions here. But what is important is the fact that everything that I have that's going on in this force is Nergal, a mortal Nergal keyworded. Okay, so like special abilities that are triggering are going to be triggered off of mortal Nergal. Is that what you're asking?
Yep. The idea that if you're sticking to a specific keyword, not only are there synergies with the powers, there also could be benefits for battle line choices, things like that. And significantly, there could be choices if you take a specific battalion war scroll to get other benefits, which you said you're not. But you also, and we envision that at some point we might see battle tome specific sub-faction specific allegiance abilities, but you're defaulting to the chaos allegiance abilities for these lists.
Yes.
That could also change and adjust some of these, how this was played as well. But in this case, we don't have them. We just have the overriding chaos. So, and they're pretty good anyway. So we're using those. So that's important. There might be different core requirement battle line units that you might have to take based on the keywords that you're utilizing.
And let me just say that even if a special Nergal force unit came out, like a special like command ability for Nergal units, this list is all mortal Nergal keyworded, so it would qualify for that other thing.
Right.
Because of that, this list would qualify for using Blight Kings for its battle line troops. Ironically, I don't have to because I've included actual battle line troops, and we'll get to that when I get through the end of the list.
Sure. Yeah. So back to the Chaos War Shrine.
Back to the War Shrine. So the War Shrine is granting a to all mortal units within within 9 inches, it's granting another 6+ ward save to any damage. Okay, to mortal wounds or normal wounds, and so. Right. Where the War Shrine and the General's bubbles overlap, whatever is in those bubbles will have a 5+ ward save and a 6+ ward save against all attacks, in addition to their armor save.
And for any newcomers, these stack. These stack. So
So you're going to roll 3 dice, assuming they don't have a big rend. You're going to roll 3 dice every time your unit takes a wound.
Is that how you do it? Because I typically go through all the wounds that apply if they apply to the standard save, and then you go through the progression for all the wounds that make it through there. And if it's, I mean, technically, no, it's not how I do it. But I was just trying to give them an idea of the defenses. Oh, okay, cool.
Because what you're gonna have to roll is you're gonna have to roll a save against their actual attack, and then once the wounds are determined after the save, then you roll the ward saves against every wound.
Right, the special saves. Yeah, to further clarify it, for regular standard saves, like your armor save, but it just says save on the radial dial. Those are before you roll the multiplier of the wounds.
Yep.
Any special save that comes afterwards, like a mortal wound type effect, whatever your special save is, saves versus mortal wounds, or what we call ward, going back to of previous editions of Warhammer, those are all for each individual singular wound, no matter how, even if there's multipliers. So you get a lot more chances to throw dice at them. So multiple saves really matter.
Yeah, so if you took 3 damage, if a guy with this ability took 3 damage and failed his armor save, then or his base save on his sheet, then what's gonna happen is that you're gonna take 3 dice and you're gonna throw 3 dice at looking for 5s and 6s.
Right.
And any of those that failed to negate, then you're going to throw that many additional dice that failed looking for 6s. And if any of those 6s, you're removing all of those wounds.
Yeah, those stacking, even if there's some of them are 6s, even getting multiple 6s, much less 5 6s, 5-ups, those are really they matter. They really count. Yeah.
Like in the long run, it will work to negate incoming damage in a significant way. Okay, so in addition to that, that's the defensive characteristic of the War Shrine. The offensive characteristic is that because it's marked for Nergal, when you target any unit in this force, which all units in this force are marked for Nergal, you can re-roll all failed wound saves for that unit.
Failed wound saves.
Failed wound rolls.
Okay.
We've just been talking saves, so
yes, no problem.
So basically, you re-roll wounds that fail from the little the caster, the priest ability on the back of the War Shrine.
Right. So that's the offensive bonus that you get.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
That's an offensive bonus that you get. So
still big. It's very big.
So it's punchy. If you need to put down, if you have a key fight, it's that extra kind of oomph that you can throw in. And to be honest, the War Shrine doesn't it's not real good, but it's still hitting on 4-up, 3-up, and if it's fresh going into combat, it's going to have 6 attacks that do 2 damage each. In a 1,000-point game, that's not too shabby.
Not at all. It has also, if people are going to try and target it to remove some of these beautiful benefits, it's resilient too. Yeah,
it's 12 wounds, and it's in its own bubble. And it's also going to be likely in the General's bubble, which means that it'll have the double save as well.
Sweet.
So it's a decent movement. Actually, ironically, it's one of the fastest units in the force at 8 move. Not that you're going to be sending it up front, but you have that option if you need to branch it off for some ridiculous reason that you'll never do. Okay,
so 200 points now on this.
200 points. Yep. So we're going to jump down to Festus, which is our next one. So Festus is a named character, and so he's bringing a couple things to this fledgling 1,000-point force. He's a 6-wound hero, which is ironically better than a lot of the other on-foot heroes. He has a normal suite of caster attacks, multiple attacks, 4-up, 3-up, D3 damage, nothing too special.
No rend, wow.
No rend. So again, that's not why you're running him.
No, of course not.
He heals 1 wound in a hero phase. So he's a 5-up save, which is, it's junk, but it is what it is. But he's also going to have because he's a mortal hero, a mortal Nurgle, He's going to have all of those ward saves if he's within the bubble. He's going to heal 1 wound on himself personally. He has spells, so he's a caster. He brings magic to this force. So he can do the counter spell. He has an Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and he can also reduce the armor saves, like the base save rolls of units for the rest of the game on a unit within 14 inches. So he has a really unique spell that helps crack some of those really tough units. You know, if you get some of those Stormcast heroes that are at 3-up save, or those units that are 3-up save, like some of those Paladin units or some of those heroes, you need to, like, this force doesn't have a lot of rend. You need to bring those saves up, and Festus allows you to do that.
I love that. Aside from mortal wounds, the best way to crack good armor is rending. This is
right.
This is giving rend to your whole army.
Rend to your entire army. Yeah,
that's very sweet.
So, ironically, that's not why I'm fielding him. Why I'm fielding him is because you're going to keep him in the little command bubble. Like, that's his purpose, is to run around with the general and to run around with the altar. Now, if in his hero phase, you can choose a model within 1 inch of him. Okay, so you're going to have him near your general and likely fairly near your war altar. If he's next to one of your allies, he can heal them for a D3 wounds. So now your war altar or your general just gained a D3 wound regeneration at the beginning of each of the turns.
Nice.
So in addition to those double ward saves and all of that other stuff, now they have the option. You have the ability to regen wounds on those 2 units, on those 2 key units. Or if there's an enemy nearby, you roll a dice on a 2-up. He does a D3 mortal wounds against them. So he also has the ability, once the melee is engaged and he's close by, he can begin dishing out mortal wounds to enemies that can then supplement his Arcane Bolt. So he has the option or the ability to drop 2d3 mortal wounds in your hero phase against an enemy nearby. So again, if you're having trouble cracking those really tough models, Festus is your solution for that. So that's why I'm fielding him. And so though they kind of make the trio on which this force is kind of based. And then we'll move on to some of our actual infantry units.
Okay, what do we got next? Let's take a look.
Okay.
We got Marauders, yes.
So here's the funny thing. Marauders are junk.
They're awful. I know.
They are so awful.
When I saw that you included them, I was like, okay, he's got a point. He's got something going on.
But are they? So these cost as much as zombies. Okay. You're going to give all of them shields. Because there's no cost to that. So they're immediately at a 5-up save. They're at standard human, 1 attack, 4-up, 1 damage. If you can deploy, because you don't need so depending on the scenario is going to dictate how you deploy this force, because you can actually combine these into larger units. Because you have your battle line and technically your Blight Kings.
Right.
So these guys have a chance basically of going and getting a you roll on a 4-up, they're going to get a +1 to hit. If you roll a 6 or more, they get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. Okay, so they go 4-up, 4-up to 3-up, 3-up. And if you have these in a block of 20 or more, you're going to get you're on a 3-up and on a 5-up. You're going to achieve this +1 to hit, +1 to wound.
Right.
Now, the Chaos ability also has a chance of granting +1 to hit. And you're gonna keep you're gonna run them with the damned icon. So they're gonna re-roll 1s to hit. So now you have the potential of they're swingy, obviously, but you could be fairly regularly on 3-up, re-roll 1s to hit, and a 3-up to wound, or possibly 3-up to wound, re-roll all wounds if you have a block of these and you've cast your priest buff on them.
Right.
So they're not great, But for 60 points, they're not terrible.
Well, let me just qualify this a little bit further, because clearly these guys are going to have, they're very, you use the reference to zombies.
Yeah.
And I really see a lot of parallels. Yep. They only have one attack. They only have 1 inch range. They have no rend. But they, in large blocks, they're getting some bonuses. So you're going to be running them typically when you can to get those accelerators. So you're talking about 3-ups, rerolling 1s to hit, and 3-ups, rerolling all failed wounds.
If for example you dump these into a single big block of 30 Marauders,
right?
Then you would reroll and you could buff them with the reroll all wounds, and saving on a 5-up,
right,
with a 5/6 ward and a 6 ward.
Right. So the 5-up ward and a 6 ward. This combination sitting inside this bubble is actually slightly better in one respect than the zombies, and only slightly worse. They're really just about the same. I played with 50 zombies in a game with very similar stats, all the accelerators and all the bonuses. They were hitting and wounding on a 2-up.
Yep.
Only no rend, 1 wound, and they had the 5-up. They have no armor at all. Yep. And they only had the one-time 5-up ward save from the combo of the Death Allegiance. And I got to tell you, the volume of hits and the fact that you're almost constantly hitting, forcing so many armor saves, and in match play, ones always fail on your saves. You need those multiple saves. They wiped out a Carnosaur in 1 turn. All right. So it was awful. I felt bad, and it was a demo game too. I didn't intend it. It was just a 500-point demo game. So let me just say this: that combination, yes, it is scary, and I'd say these guys are more resilient.
You're talking these guys up more than even I am, because here's the deal: they're not good, okay? But you're also getting, and so you can deploy them as a big block. You can deploy them as a block of 20. And as a block of 10, and the key is that they give you the option to claim and hold points, because a lot of the actual match play is based on having models around a point.
Yep.
Okay. It's either multiple models, 5 or more around a point, or a hero. Which, by the way, you'll notice that I have 2 heroes in this first list as well, because heroes matter in matched play. Right. Festus and the Harbinger, because heroes matter in match play, and so they give you a fighting chance in the hero claim, because you can take 2 of the 3 points and hold.
Right.
And also, if you have like one of the 4-point hold 4 points scenarios, you can split up those 10 Marauders into 3 units of 10 in addition to your Blight Kings running.
Let's remember that at a 1,000-point game, they suggest a 4x4 table. I think it is.
Yep.
So you have a lot. Yeah. Even though you're slower in this army.
Yep.
There's less real estate in the game.
Yep, it's true. So, these Chaos Marauders it's a flex unit depending on what you need. If you need a Death Star, you're going to do that. If you need to be able to split them up and hold points, you can do that. It's a flexible force. They're not fantastic, but you have the tools to make them playable, is what I would say.
Yeah, with all those add-ons, they are definitely effective.
and again, if nothing else, they can also be is a big like a big tar pit, because you can take 30 of these guys with that 5-up armor, 5-up, 6-up ward save, and just throw them into something scary and mow down the rest of their force by the time they chew through your 180 points of Marauders. Because the reality is that that's all you've invested in 30 Marauders is 180 points.
That's how I run my zombie list.
Yeah.
So, these a lot of similarities, man. I'm very impressed, because I've seen what it can do on the battlefield with what I use. The parallels are amazing.
And you don't even get saves on zombies, do you? Or is it 6-up?
You don't get saves at all, but the 5-up or the 6-up potential 5-up is ginormous, because they can't get saves. They can't improve it with cover from terrain. This unit has a base 6-up, can improve it further with shields,
base 5-up
cover.
Yeah, it is misleading, because it's because this there's no reason to not carry shields. It doesn't change your weapons at all.
Right,
and if you carry shields, they're 5-up.
because you can be on cover in potentially. So now you have a very respectable save, base save, not even counting the multiple special saves. So they're resilient.
Yeah, they have an armor save. You have a caster, so if you need to, you can you could ward save.
Very nice.
Or you could not ward save. You could
Mystic
shield Mystic Shield.
Yeah, you could put these guys on a 3-up and 3-up with 2 special ward saves.
2 yeah, exactly. Like, so these guys can do some work if you need them to. Yeah. And so it's funny because I never looked at these guys. Like they were never an option when I was first building. But the more and more I dug into this, the more and more I realized like there's gold in them there hills.
Yeah, it's the points versus the effectiveness ratio. Yep. If they're so cheap with all these bonuses, that, it just makes.
I can have a block of 10 Chaos Warriors, or I can have 30 of these guys.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's the decision to make. And with all this bonusing, I have to take the 30 Chaos Marauders. In fact, for the upcoming hobby challenge, the Army of Sigmar thing coming up. So I'm going to continue to augment my. I'm breaking the news here as to what I'm doing. I'm going to augment my Nurgle force, and I'm going to convert a bunch of Blood Reavers because I hate the current Marauder models. I'm going to convert a bunch of the Blood Reavers over to Nergal. Marauders.
Very nice. Are you going to do a video series on it?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, I have a video that I'm going to be releasing either later today or tomorrow on mine. So I won't take any time doing that. But I'm sure that the viewers will probably know exactly where I'm headed.
Because
I'm looking forward to yours, man. You got to do some kind of video series. Show us at least one on what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, because the reality is this: like, I had just dismissed Chaos Marauders completely, and then when I started doing the math and looking at the numbers, I was like, I can't not throw these guys into so many forces because it's so cheap to have a very interesting, potentially effective tool.
Yeah, I want to caution viewers, especially old timers, newcomers, whatever.
Yep.
There are so many junk units that when you look at the War Scroll, you're first going to think this just doesn't make any sense. But one of the beauties of Age of Sigmar is that there are combos that suddenly make them amazing, and we're in a new meta with points, so that changes the dynamic as well. So we're all still learning about some of the changes when we play match play. Obviously, open play is still a thing. Hopefully, it won't die out. But in match play, we are learning about how these combinations actually even make more sense. And I wrote off Chaos Marauders too. I was one of those people.
So, Chaos Marauders, I got 3 units of them in my 1,000-point list. Okay, so moving on.
Blight Kings, right?
Yeah. Blight Kings. So, here's the deal. Blight Kings are amazing. I love Blight Kings, and originally, I just wanted to build all Blight Kings, and I still have 2 units in a 1,000-point list. This is almost half my points here. So, they're beautiful, and I like them, and they're mortal Nurgle. So, guess what? They're at a 4-up save running around with all those ward saves. And they're also super killy. If anybody's ever played Blight Kings, they're 3 attacks, 3-up base.
Yep.
And they're rolling 6s to hit, explode into a D6 hits.
Yeah, I have a battle report coming up against a Nurgle specific force that I have not released. I can't wait to cut it. Yep. But yeah, there was a lot of Blight Kings on the table. Absolutely.
And so a lot of people run Blight Kings in these 10 block Blight Kings. This double unit, and I don't understand why. So if some other player could post in the comments as to why you would run larger blocks of Blight Kings, I don't understand it. And here's why I don't understand it. Because one of their most interesting abilities is nerfed when you do that, and that's Virulent Discharge. So this ability, in your hero phase, you roll a dice for this unit and each other unit within 3 inches. On a 6... that unit suffers a D3 mortal wounds or heals a D3 wounds if it's a Nergal unit. Okay? These abilities stack. If you look at the wording, the more Nergal units Blight King units you have, the more dice you're rolling.
That's great.
Okay? So if you have 4 Nergal units within close proximity, you roll 4 dice and every 6 generates a D3 wounds and every 6 heals a D3 wounds.
I can hear your passion because as you're saying it, you're emphasizing it with a smack on the table.
Yeah, I can't state this strongly enough.
Yeah.
And so, like, these guys can hang out around your general and have a chance of also generating an additional D3 healing on him. And when the poop hits the fan, they're also going to generate mortal wounds when they get into combat. So all of these wounds and ward saves together for this force is going to help it get it across the table. And so that's how this has been built. Now for artifacts, you only have the option of equipping your general, the Harbinger of Decay. So I went with either the Chaos Blade or the Chaos Talisman. And I think it would depend on the circumstances. If you really feel like, if you're having a problem with your general getting sniped, the Chaos Talisman gives him an additional 6-up ward save, 5-up against order.
If that's as if it wasn't enough when he had already.
Okay, so if your general, let me say that again. If your general needs a 3rd ward save, you can give him the Chaos Talisman.
Oh my god, that's great.
I would more likely give him the Chaos Rune Blade, which increases his like 3-up, 3-up, -1 rend, like D3 wounds to having 4 attacks. Just because he is your most killy character, and making him more killy is what is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Now, honorable mention, because you don't have range, and because range is an issue, and I've talked about this already. Honorable mention is the Beguiling Gem, because you're going to subtract 1 from all hits during the first round of combat. At the start, well, hold on. During the first battle at the start of the combat phase. Actually, I take that back. It's junk. I was thinking about the Chaos ability. I was thinking about something else.
Okay.
But no, the Beguiling Gem, it just reduces a -1 to hit at the beginning of a combat phase once per round. It's something else I was actually thinking of.
Okay.
You could do the Crown of Chaos, by the way, on your general, and allow him to both Inspiring Presence and use his command bubble. So if you have that big block of Chaos Marauders, you can make them steadfast through Inspiring Presence if you need to. So yeah, and depending on, let me say all that, if you're in an organized event, depending on what the ruling is on demonic weapon, that may be worth running as well.
So what are the different interpretations?
I don't know. Nobody else has pointed this out, and so I may be reading this wrong. But so the ability says roll 2 dice when it is used to attack and add them together. After it is used to attack. So my question is this: do you roll those 2 dice in between each attack roll? So I have 3 attacks on my general. Do I roll it after each attack, or the entire attack sequence?
Yeah, it probably need a little more clarification, because I'm sure the rules lawyers and the people who are diving very deeply into each the grammatical makeup of the rule are going to dissect it to be whatever is most advantageous to them. So I can see what you're saying. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
You could roll this 3 times during each attack round, and on a 7 or more on 2d6, which has a fairly high ratio, it's like a 50% chance, a little bit more. You're going to inflict an additional mortal wound on an enemy within 3 inches. I'm inclined to think it's the total
one time in a combat round.
Yep.
This is me.
Yep.
I always try to go for the most conservative interpretation of the rule. I try to do that, but I've been surprised at some of the FAQ rulings over the years, and so you never really can be sure. It's probably something that would warrant not only checking with the TO, the tournament organizer of the event that you're going to, but just keeping a lookout for a clarification in the Q&A and the FAQ. Yeah,
just once, this is fairly weak, and in addition to that, you have a chance, by the way, of wounding yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, but still, that could be Nurgle. That's Warhammer in a lot of respects. I don't look at it as fairly weak. I mean, anything that inflicts mortal wounds is a big deal, and you're getting it every turn. But in comparison to what you can get from some of the other ones, I agree. The artifacts in all of these lists and all of these armies, sub-factions included, tend to be swinging. There are some that are really good and some that are not so good. So that's why I prefer the choosy, but I can see the merit for having a randomizer, having to roll to see, because you never know what you're going to get. I do hate in a competitive environment having this be the thing that could potentially screw up your synergies and even lose you the game because you didn't get a good one and your opponent got a good one. So I pour the idea of randomness in there. But yeah, you know what? I think it's, if you're playing in your own personal game, home game, local game, play it as you guys wish. But definitely check for an event. We can move on.
That's what I would say, is that like potentially my qualification here is, depending on how demon weapon gets read.
Right.
That could also be a very viable, because you'd roll 3 times to do mortal wounds.
Yeah, it can be pretty brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. Okay, and then for my actual ability, for the chaos ability, obviously. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the chaos ability, this battle trait, unpredictable destruction, means that anytime you activate a chaos unit in the combat phase, so in the melee phase, within 8 inches of your general or another hero, which you have 2 different points to potentially trigger this, on a roll of 6 or more, you're going to add 1 to the hit rolls for the unit being triggered. So you have a potential. So kind of like the undead one adds a ward save of 6+, this on a 6 adds +1 to hit.
Yeah. Which makes those Marauders even better.
Yeah, yes. And so the Great Destroyer would be my potentially my pick of my pick in a 1,000-point game, because it's so tight. The force is so tight. This Great Destroyer only impacts around your general, but your general, that's going to be a smaller bubble, obviously, given the way the battlefield is on a 4x4, and it makes it a 5/6. So every time you activate a unit, there's a 1/3 chance they're getting +1 to hit. So obviously the honorable mention. Jumping back to the honorable mention, the honorable mention here for me would be Cunning Deceiver, because Cunning Deceiver makes it so that during the first round of combat, the enemy has -1 to hit. So this helps mitigate that shooting during round 1.
Nice.
So it helps combat that. So that would be another potential ability that you could feel that I think would be very viable, especially depending on who you're playing.
Very nice starter list. There's a lot that you can bring to the table. Yeah, it's a little bit slow. There's no shooting, but yeah, for what you're fielding, I think it would be not only fun to play and play against, and really good thematically, but I think it'd be pretty effective.
So we'll see. It should be very hardy.
Yeah,
which as all Nurgle lists should be. So as we move forward, what you're going to see is that a lot of these things overlap. For this list, the Chaos Warshine, Festus, the Chaos Marauders, the Blight Kings, all of those have stayed. Okay?
All right, so we're now moving on to the 2K list, the most standard list that we're seeing for tournament play. Now, before we get into this, just before you jump in, there's the requirements for your list are going to change. You're going to need now 3 battle line core units.
Yep.
You're going to have your maximums for behemoths bumped to 4. I believe your leaders max out at 6. I doubt those are going to be challenged. But now we're at 2,000 points. Okay, now go ahead, take it away.
Behemoths should be at 3, right?
No, at 4 at 2,000.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm definitely fine. Okay. So so as I said, the War Shrine, Festus, the 3 Marauders, and the Blight King stay the same. I've pulled the Harbinger because he's no longer the general.
Got it.
The Glotkin is going to be the general now.
Oh man, what an upgrade!
Yeah, and so the difference here is that you've moved from a 5/6 ward save to a 6-up ward save. So you're moving out of the highly defensive force to more of an offensive force. And if you'll look at
Glotkin,
a lot of people have critiqued his survivability for his point cost, and I just don't see it.
let me go just check out his point
he's 480. He's 480. But he's at a 4-up. He's a 4-up save. He heals the D3 wounds at the start of your hero phase. And with the rest, and then also on top of that, He doesn't have a base ward save, but he's going to pick up the Chaos War Shrine ward save, and he's going to pick up the D3 healing from Festus, who's going to hump him, who's going to follow him around, and so he's going to heal 2d3 at the beginning of every turn.
That's a bad visual, man.
Yeah, I know.
All
right. And so he has some okay abilities, like throwing his bulk around to do some mortal wounds or whatever.
Right.
He's fairly killy. He has a vomiting attack within a 12-inch range that does 2d6 wounds on a Ren -2. And he can be the subject of that War Shrine's buff, so you can re-roll all of these wounds, including that 4-up on that 2d6 range attack, the 2d6 wounds on that range attack. He has a caster on his back. He has Ethrak, who's going to cast 2 spells. Amongst the Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, you're also going to have Fleshy Abundance. And this is going to be able to grant wounds to larger units. And so what this does is for every model in the unit, every model gains an additional wound. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you need a unit to be absorbing wounds, this is what you want. Okay. Because what this does is you have somebody sitting on a point and you need to soak up some wounds. Like, for example, you have a bunch of Marauders that need to be a tar pit. You can double their wounds with each casting of this spell.
Such a good spell.
Yeah. And then his command ability is a 14-inch bubble rather than a 7-inch bubble, and it increases the attack characteristic by 1 on all the melee weapons. For all Nurgle units within 14 inches. Not Nurgle mortal, but just Nurgle, and that's going to be important here in a minute. And so that means that all of his attacks, including his Lamprey Maul, the Scythe, and the Flailing Tentacle, all those attacks go up by 1. So he obviously benefits from his own offensiveness. All of those Blight Kings are swinging an additional time. Those Marauders are swinging 2 times around now instead of once. But more importantly, let's jump to the unanticipated inclusion in this list. The rodents of unusual size. So I've included 3 Pestilence units.
Which one do you want to go to?
Let's go to the Plague Monks first.
All right.
And so I've included Plague Monks, and this is obviously going to raise some questions. Like, Tom, what are you thinking here? So here's the deal. And not only am I including Plague Monks, I'm including Plague Monks equipped with both the Fetid Blades and the Woe Staves. Okay? And again, you're going to ask, Tom, what are you thinking?
Tom, what are you thinking?
Those Woe Staves... This is
something I'm sure you hear from Vince quite often.
Terrible. Okay? Those attacks on those Woe Staves are terrible. Other than the 2-inch range, those attacks are terrible.
A 4-up, 5-up, yeah. No rend.
Yep, no rend, 1 damage. What is going on here? Well, funny story. These 3 attacks become 5 attacks with Glotkin.
Yeah, because each one gets +1. That's right.
When you charge, it goes to 6 attacks because Fetid Blades goes up to 3 attacks. So each model is at 6 attacks on a charge of these Plague Monks. And roll a dice for every unit within. So then you can also depending on the ruling, like some TOs are only allowing 1 of each type, so you have to choose which one of the banners. Normally, you should be able to field all of these options, except for the Plague Harbinger, your commander. You're going to have to make or not Harbinger. The Bringer of the Word is going to have to make a decision between the Book of Woes and the Plague Scroll. And it's what did I choose here? I don't remember.
Yeah, so while you're looking, just to give the wording for banners for the icons or banners or standards is that the unit may models in this unit may be icon bearers, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
When meaning that you could have everybody in the unit be an icon bearer. And if everybody's in an icon bearer, then potentially you could choose all these different options if there's more options. They don't usually have this many options on a war scroll for banner types. But to make it a little bit more reasonable, because you don't usually get a benefit for having multiple banners. It just means you have less chance to lose your banner if the banner is important to you for a variety of reasons. In this case, if you field everybody as a banner bearer, it's a little bit obnoxious, but it is technically legal, and a lot of TOs have instituted that you only get one banner choice per unit, or one effective banner choice per unit.
So the plague scroll is what I was going to run, which basically you choose an enemy unit within 13 inches once per game, and you mark it, and all of your people that are attacking it until your next hero phase reroll wound rolls of 1. Okay, and so the idea is that you're going to dump that on that initial charge where you're getting 6 attacks, and all of your wound rolls of 1, in addition to anything else that's attacking that unit, are going to get rerolled.
Nice.
So then, in addition to that, I would probably run, if I have to choose, I would probably end up running the Contagion banner, which it's a little bit more swingy, obviously, but you're throwing out so many attacks that you're going to have more wound rolls, and you're going to have more having more wound rolls means more chances of triggering the mortal wound. So what it is on every wound roll, whenever you roll a 6 or more to wound, you roll an additional dice. If that additional dice is a 6, they suffer a mortal wound.
Right, but it's potentially better than a 6 or more, because that 6 or more means that you get modified.
Yeah.
So it could be on a 5. I mean, are we only talking about a +1 potentially for this unit, or is there any other modifiers?
I'll have to double check. I don't think that there's a whole lot more.
Okay, so then it potentially this procs on a procs. I'm going back to my online game days.
Well, this is to wound. This procs on the wound, not on the to hit.
Right, but with 6 attacks potentially each, you're going to get some wounds.
Yes. Yeah, and potentially they could be the subject of the +1 to hit from the chaos trigger as well.
Right. Very nice.
And then for the chimes, I would probably take the one that gives the the chance of a Ren characteristic on a 6 to wound as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously trying to put more wounds on. So this is just the base chassis that you're building on, and then we'll get to what else is running with it.
Okay.
So move to the plague furnace next.
Plague furnace. All right.
Yep. So you have another hero here floating around. And you're going to have your plague monks all running around, pushing this plague furnace some ridiculous distance, ramming it into something and doing a stupid amount of mortal wounds and stuff like that. So, but the key here is that the synergy that is going on. And so what you're going to also be getting is that the priest can buff your Skaven unit, your plague monks. And they're going to die. Okay, we all know that. Like, there's just no question about that. They're going to die. But what they can do is they can buff them so that if a model from this unit is slain in the combat phase, it can make a pile-in and a move with one of its weapons before you remove it. So on that initial charge, they go in, they hit hard. Okay. And then the attack back is inevitably going to kill like a bunch of Skaven. Like there's no way around that, because these guys are going to hit hard. They have no armor save. They're just going to explode unless you've clashed Fleshy Abundance, and then they're at 2 wounds each. But most likely not.
Yeah, there are better choices for that.
But exactly, they're better choices. But when they do die, with this buff, they're going to they can basically, those models can repile in and attack with one of their weapons, and you're going to choose the one weapon that gives 4 additional attacks, their Fetid Blades, on that charge. So you have a chance of soaking up an additional, or dealing out an additional 4 attacks with each one of those plague monks that have died in this first round of combat.
Nice.
So and then they have to deal with the plague furnace as well. Which has its own kind of bonuses, and it's a neat little like mortal wounds generator. And so you're going to take the furnace and the plague monks are going to strike as a unit, probably at on and off point, or on the main point, and then the Glotkin and your Marauders are probably going to go hold points, and then the Glotkin and the and the Blight Kings are going to march around together. And they'll probably supplement this fight, or maybe engage in a secondary fight.
Nice.
So there are a lot of options here with how this ends up playing out. But this gives you a second, like, strong strike force.
Yeah, what you're going to need on a bigger board, because 2,000 points is your standard board size. Yeah.
Yep.
You need a good, solid secondary force.
Yep.
All right. What are we looking at next? We're looking at the
plague claw. Yep.
All right.
So this gives us.
I have to go to the compendium to grab.
That's fine.
Well, because I don't think I have a specific one. So let's go see if I can do that real quickly.
We'll be down with the pestilence stuff.
Yeah. All right.
The key is the plague claw gives us the range that we just don't have in this force. It's only 31 inches, but it allows you to shoot enemies that aren't visible.
This hasn't changed with the the compendium is the same same war scroll, right?
Yep. It doesn't have a crew, so that's a strength here.
That's always a bonus. Yes.
Yeah. Now crews can be targeted. This doesn't have a crew, so that's 6. Like, it has 6 wounds. It gains +1 to saves in the shooting phase, so it goes to 4-up save in the shooting phase. And it's super effective against larger model count units. So it'll go up from a 3-up to hit to a 2-up to hit if they have 10 or more models.
Nice.
And the damage goes to 2d6. Yeah, it's just a nice punchy. It only has 1 attack, but it only needs 1 attack. Again, it'll be a 2-up to hit, 3-up to wound. There are ways in this force to increase that wound, in multiple different ways to increase that wound. Right. Either rerollable from the priest. I think the priest's buff, the one that I didn't choose, can buff that, make that a rerollable, reroll to wound on the plague claw. I think the who's the other one? The war altar, the war shrine, can make that a rerollable. It has to be a mortal unit, so that doesn't work. And then if the plague monks have marked a unit, that'll let them reroll ones on the wound. So there are lots of options here.
Yeah. And a -2 Ren die 6 is beautiful. That's just. Yeah, that's going to punch through heavy armor. Right.
Again, and if there's more than 10 models or more, it goes to 2d6 damage.
Right, so you go after a heavily armored, like a cav unit or a stormcast with good armor, like you were mentioning earlier, and you're going to get the extra bonus, and you're going to remove models.
Yep, and that's the idea, is that you're just trying to help kind of soften up some of those key things.
And it's fairly expensive for a war machine at 180, but not terribly so for what you're getting out of it. You're only taking 1 of those, so you're certainly
Yep.
You're going to have to think about where you're positioning it, because you're not going to be able to overlap with multiple of these.
Right. Yep.
Okay, where are we going next?
Chaos Familiars.
I don't actually have the war scroll for that.
So they are from the Warriors of Chaos.
All right, I can go pull it up while you're
here. I can pull it up for you.
Okay, great.
So here we go. Share my screen. The Chaos Familiars are junk. They're going to run around with that group of the Glotkin and whatnot. And the key here is that they're just going to add +1 to casting and binding on rolls for your Chaos Wizards. And there are 2 more models in that that low model count group.
All right.
Okay. So you have 2 packs of Blight Kings. You have your Glotkin. You have Festus. You have the War Shrine. This adds 2 more models to that group for claiming and holding objectives, and it's bonusing the casting and unbinding rolls of the 3 spells that are going to be cast out of that group, because both Festus and also Glotkin are going to be casting spells. If you didn't want to go, obviously, you need 40 points to burn here, and there's just not a lot of options in Chaos. I have went this route. One other route that you could go is where are they at?
As a replacement for the 40 points?
Yeah, as a replacement for the 40 points here. I thought the Chaos Warhounds were 40, but they might not be.
All right.
No, the Chaos Familiars are. I don't see the Warhounds, but I don't think that maybe the Familiars might be the only option for the 40.
Yeah, I'll go look at it while we go to the next thing. I'll see if I can find the points on those. All right, so we're going to come off of that. Let's see. We're back to. All right, so what are we missing here? We've gone over Blight Kings and the.
We've done all of it. Like again, like you have that core that's the same, and then you've added Blot Major General.
Did we talk about Festus?
Yeah, Festus was the same one. He's going to be the granted D3 healing, and then he's going to be casting and reducing permanent armor saves. So we've went through everything here. The artifacts are the same. Likely what you're going to do, by the way, is give that ward save now to the Plague Claw Catapult, because you have a hero Skaven on the back of that Plague Claw.
Right.
And so you're going to give a 6 up or 5 up against Order to your Plague Claw to make it a little bit more survivable. But whatever you give, it has to be to the Plague Claw, or not the Plague Claw, I'm sorry, the Plague Furnace. It has to be the Plague Furnace because everything else is a named hero and they can't take items.
Got it. What? Where am I looking for the Warhounds, the Chaos? Because I looked at Warriors of Chaos. I don't see them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of where they might have been moved to, just so I can go jump to that really quickly before we move.
I don't think it's important. I checked Corn and I didn't see them. It's Beasts. I think. Beast. Hold on. I think it's Beast. It's Monsters of Chaos. No, they're 80 points. I'm sorry.
All right. So the Chaos Familiars are your choice. Okay.
Yeah, the Chaos Familiars are your only 40-point choice in Chaos.
Okay. So there you go. This is your standard, typical 2,000 point list that you're suggesting for Nergal. Nergal. This is not just specifically Nergal Mortal now. This is crossing the boundaries. So this is technically just Nergal, but within the overriding Chaos Grand Alliance.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Now, if you want, you could trade the Chaos Familiars and 10 of those Chaos Marauders, and you could potentially upgrade those to go to the where are they? The Chaos Marauder Horsemen, if you wanted a little bit more mobility. So if you out of one of those, so you can get rid of the Familiars and upgrade those to that. I take that back. Now you can't, because that's your other battle line.
Oh, gotcha. Right.
You are stuck with you are basically stuck with that list because I've added Pestilence to this unit. And by the way, you have to add, if you want range for Nergal, you have to basically add something that's non-Nergal. There's no way to get to that. So you can't keep the Nergal mortal keywords, which is the key to the Rotbringers. Without adding another unit. So I've chosen to add Skaven here because of these couple things. And by the way, the starter pack of Skaven is going to get you most of the way, because it's going to give you a Furnace, a Plague Claw Catapult, and 20 Monks.
Yeah, and it's an incredible value, too. Yeah. I mean, it's if you're looking to, and plus the plague-focused Skaven combined with Nergal is just so thematic. I mean, it's a really nice thematic army. I really like the combination more than just going out and finding other stuff just because it might work well or look cool on the battlefield or be effective. This is a real good, not just good synergies, but a really appropriate, even just for the fluff. I mean, some people don't give a damn about that, but those are the kinds of things that sometimes could matter in a tournament. If you're thinking about it competitively, look, you might just be like me or you, Tom or I, where you really like to stick to themes, and even you try to shoehorn really good items in there, but themes can matter as well. You may throw that caution to the wind, but when it comes to tournaments, sometimes there are points that the organizers and the judges will throw at you based on these types of situations. It could be part of a paint score. It could be, who knows how they're scoring. And having things put into a theme still being effective can really, really matter. Yeah. Those are intangibles that you can't, if you're being competitive in an organized event, that can put you over the top. Though all things being equal, they may edge with you.
It's true. I would say that another option is that you could potentially drop your Plague Claw Monks down to 20. which would free up 70 points, and combine it with so you could either bump one of those Marauder units up to 20, or you could basically combine it with the Chaos Familiar points and free up 110 points to dump into something else.
Right.
So,
okay, let's take a look at your 2,500 point list, and just to go and explain a little bit further here. You're probably not going to play a 2,500 point list too often. I've only seen one event that's at the 2,250 point, organized event. You may, with your friends, want to do it. This is supposed to be played on an 8x6 board, I think, recommended. I agree with that because I've played with some higher point games. I've ran some mega battles. When you get higher than 2,000 or 2,500 points, let me just also say that AOS does sometimes bog down. It becomes very hard to keep track of all the synergies and combinations. You really need tokens for this game. I use tokens anyway, but once you get to the bigger games like 2K+, you need tokens. It helps. But when you get to bigger games, it becomes that much more. So I would put this at the 3,000 to 3,500 point level of, say, equivalent of 8th edition. It's a bigger army, but, go ahead and do it. It's fun. Why not? All right, so here we go. Now we're bringing in the big guns.
So now I took a hard left into filth. Like before, yes, it's been there's been some neat combos and stuff like this, but I've really so I've taken what you saw in that first list, which was the super hard multiple ward save.
Yeah.
And I've returned back to that, but I've added some just ridiculously hard units. Okay. So basically almost everything stayed the same from that first list, but I've added Archaon, Glotkin, and 3 Varangard. Okay. Here's why this is important. Okay. Archaon and the Varangard all have or can have the Nurgle keyword. And they're all the mortal keyword.
Nice.
So all of those, and Glotkin, by the way, is also a Nergal mortal. So all of those filthy ward save stuff that we pulled in the 1,000 point list, we're pulling now in the 2,500 point list.
All right, so let me pull up. Are we going to start with Archaon?
Yeah, we'll do Archaon.
All right. I'm blind from all the text here.
Yes. Well, here we go. So Archaon is, he looks a lot more killy than he actually is. Vince and I have had a long conversation about Archaon. And he looks a lot more killy than he actually is. But his staying power and his persistent pressure is where and the mobility. Okay, so he's a 12-inch fly move, which is something that you just did not have. He's a 20 wound 3-up save, so he's opening very hard. Right. His armor grants him a 6-up. I'm sorry, his armor grants him a where is it? Where's his ward save? Not his armor. Okay. His rune shield grants him a 5-up ward against mortal wounds. Okay. He has a chance to reflect back wounds. If his save is a 6 roll, he'll reflect back a mortal wound. What was it? You can force enemies to reroll hits if they hit you. He's especially devastating against heroes and monsters. He has a chance to slay him instantly with his Slayer of Kings, which is his sword. His Crown of Domination, he can adjust battle shock tests by 2 up or down depending on whatever he feels like. There it is. I had missed it. And then also, yes, he has a flat 4 or higher ward save against any spell or spell effect. So wounds or effect, he negates on a 4-up.
Yeah, the spell effect is the big deal to me.
Yeah.
And if he kills a wizard, he gets their spell.
Yeah, and then the different heads will do different things. So if he kills wizards, he gets their spells. He can do mortal wounds if he uses his Nurgle head. Yeah. So anyways, so it's just a neat, he's just flexible. He's a spellcaster in his own right. He does it all. Okay. Yeah. And more so, he makes everyone do it all because he's your general and he's a commander. And what he does is when he triggers command ability, all other chaos units, there's no range on this ability. All other chaos units in your army that have a command abilities can activate the command abilities in your hero phase. So he turns on all other command abilities with his command ability. This is significant because now that Glotkin ability to grant 1 extra attack at a 14-inch bubble, 1 extra melee attack, affects everybody, and it's always on. That ability of the Harbinger to grant the 7-inch 5-up like ward save for mortal Nurgle, which all of your units are mortal Nurgle in this force. He turns on. All of those things are turned on by Archaon's command ability.
Nice.
And so you can, in addition to his protection against mortal wounds and Archaon's protection against spells, you can also grant him a 5-up universal ward save and a 6-up universal ward save from the build. So we're just stacking on filth with like how hard Archaon is. He can self-heal from the Corn Head on Dorgar. He has 4 melee attacks, so all of them would increase by 1 if he's within Glotkin's bubble. He could be buffed to re-roll all failed wound rolls by the Shrine if you need him to. He's just filthy. I mean, there's no way around that.
Yeah, he's going to command a lot of attention too on the battlefield. But
yes.
Come at me.
Yeah, come at him because he's really going to be okay. Yeah. Like you could have an entire gun line dump into him, and with as many ward save and mortal wound buffs as he has and spell negations and stuff like that, he should be able to weather most of those storms. And
the potential to heal back, which he very likely is going to get to do because he is very killy and mobile. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So he's going to do some work, and that's the idea. So the other addition to this unit that we haven't covered, this force that we haven't covered yet, is the Varangard. And so I added 3 Varangard here, and this was a late addition. I really wrestled with adding, like, keeping Festus in the list and having some Blight Kings and more Blight Kings. And I waffled back and forth, but I realized that the Varangard give you a mobile unit that synergizes with everything else if they're within the bubble. And if they're not within the bubble, they're still super effective.
Plus, Varangard, it just fits with Archaon too.
Yes, exactly.
There's so much that works well together with them.
Yep. Yeah. And like, they get +1 to hit rolls if Archaon's on the battlefield. So then they hit on like 2-ups. They can re-roll charges. And then I think they get to like once during the battle they can double pylon. Is that right?
It's the
once per battle they can double pylon. Yes. Right. And so they can really range out and function independently without any of the support of that other stuff. And they're super killy.
How do you put double pylon? Because I've heard people argue both sides. My understanding and my interpretation is that it means you can choose them a second time, in the combat phase.
Yep.
To do a successive pylon. I've heard some people say, no, you get the pylon immediately right after you do it and do an immediate no. I don't think that's how it works.
They can't read, those people that are arguing that.
Yeah.
Because if you read the ability, it says once per battle the unit can be chosen.
Right.
They can be chosen to pile in and attack a second time.
Thank you.
Yes. You have to choose them in order to have them pile in a second time. Right. And it has to be during the same combat phase.
Right.
So the whole they can be chosen means that they have to be chosen.
Okay.
Yeah, so these guys are going to these guys, again, they synergize with everything else because they're mortal and they gain the Nurgle keyword. If Archaon's on the battlefield, he can give them whatever keyword he wants. But because they don't natively have the Nurgle keyword, you don't get the mortal Nurgle battle line. And so you have to actually run the 4 units of Marauders independently.
Right, which they'll get those benefits and they'll be hardy because of it.
Right, yeah. I mean, yes. But what ends up happening is in this type of game, those Marauders are taking and sitting on points.
Right.
You're sending them out. You're dispatching them to points to hold points, not to kill things.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
And what you're likely doing is you have your main contingent of Archeon, Glotkin, the Harbinger, the War Shrine, and the 5 Blight Kings as your major force that can split off. So both the Blight Kings and the Vanguard can be independent if you need them to be. And they're both fairly killy. And then you just keep that like main Death Star of heroes together, moving around the battlefield and obliterating anything that gets close to them. I mean, and nothing is going to stand up to that type of force when again, you're, it's with the amount of ward saves and the amount of damage and the amount of wounds and the auto healing. The only thing that I would love to add back into this force is I would love to add Festus back in. And so I would, just because he would grant an additional D3 healing, and he helps crack those armor saves. And so if I was going to alter this list at all and leave Varangard in, if I leave Varangard in, what ends up happening is I would, if I leave Varangard in, I would end up probably dropping a unit of Blight Kings. If I took the Varangard out, what I would do is I would trade the Varangard for a unit of Blight Kings, Festus, and probably that's at 300. I'd have 60 more points. And so what I would do is I would make a Death Star of 30 Chaos Marauders, and I would do one of 20 Chaos Marauders. And so then you just have these bigger bubbles of Chaos Marauders, and you'd have 15 total Blight Kings running around.
Nice. So some variants there, options for 2,500. The nice thing about 2,500 is you got so much room to play.
Yep. And then I said the artifact, that was a copy-paste error on the Plague Furnace. Those would go to the Harbinger of Decay to keep that little 7-wound hero alive. Right. Probably I would probably put the ward save on him because he's more utility in this list rather than killing us.
And once again, there's no other chaos traits because
I'm using Archeon.
You're using Archeon as your general, and unique named characters as your general don't get those bonuses. They've got enough. Yeah, exactly. and he really does. It's almost offensive to add these ward saves to Archeon, but or to Glotkin for that matter. Because Glotkin is tacking on an additional 2 ward saves on it into his auto healing D3. But we're playing Nurgle, so that means we're playing filthy, right? Well, yeah, we're playing matched play, so you're playing filthy. So let's be realistic. If you're playing matched play, I mean, you might want to incorporate points into your open play games or your narrative games, and that's fine. But when we're talking about match play, we're talking about competitive play. It's combat. You're coming to fight, and I don't consider anything filthy. If you're not bringing the filth, I think that you're doing it wrong. I mean, you bring what you want, but you're entering into an environment, into the arena, and it's kill or be killed. That's just the game. Have fun. Try to make it the best experience possible, but you're there to win.
So, and let me just add an addendum and acknowledge that, yes, I agree. But it's, and this list is filthy, but it's still lacking strong mobility, which is why I added the Varangard, the 2,500 point list. And it's still definitely lacking range. Right. And so that's just it. It's the cost of playing Nurgle. If you're not going to branch out significantly and add like a Hell Cannon or stuff like that, then I think that you're like, it's just something that you accept and you lean into the ward saves and the defense and the survivability, as opposed to leaning in to try to diversify your list and add range.
Don't discount survivability. I mean, just having played all the games since these Allegiant rules came out, I played a ton of games with the Allegiance rules for death. And having that 6-up potentially going to 5-up, which there's a lot of cases where that matters, even after the FAQ'd it to kind of dial it back, where the extra +1 is only within range of the general. Which, it bothered me at first, but it doesn't bother me too much. There are a lot of, I mean, look, in this case, it's really kind of army-wide. There's not really as much of a range when you consider that bonus. It doesn't have the same difference. you're getting much more. It's the 5-up is more pervasive. Am I correct with that?
The what?
The ability to get to the 5-up is more pervasive than even death.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, plus you get many cases where you get a multiple of an additional, like 6-up. But I've had like the 5-up with an inherent 4-up, let's say, or whatever it might be, 5-up on the model itself. I mean, like for instance, just comparatively, Nagash has its own 4-up. He's going to get an extra 6-up, and he's going to be your general. If you're bringing Nagash, he's going to be your general. But I look at like the Morghast Archive. You know, they're the two-handed weapon wielders. They've got a native 5-up, and then you could have a second 5-up, which I did in one of the last games I played. And they took on half of my opponent's Stormcast army. I mean, he had a unit of Liberators, 2 of the great weapon wielding units, and were being shot at by Judicators. I mean, they were surrounded. It was 2 Archai. They had their native, I think, 4-up, the 5-up mortal, and 5-up against mortal, and then another 5-up against everything. And it took like 3 turns for them to die, which is astonishing. So yeah, let's not discount the multiple layers of rolls, which Nergal has abundance of. And that sticking power means that maybe you're slow and it takes you a little bit longer to get there, but you're probably going to get there.
And another option in that higher tier is that in that 2,500 is you could put another War Altar onto the table. Like that's not out of, that's only 200 points. So that's not out of the like if you wanted to add a second 6-up ward save. It's filthy, but you could add another commander, another Harbinger at 140 points to grant a second 5-up ward save in a 7-inch bubble for 140 points.
And
because
redundancy.
That's a non-named hero. Yeah, it's redundancy. Yeah, and so like you could do that. It would be it'd be filthy as hell. But you can. And it's going to affect every unit in your force.
Again, I'm all for the fun games, the fluffy games, the narrative games. I love open play, but if you're throwing down into a tournament, if there's however many people putting money down, getting hotels, doing a 2-day or 3-day tournament, and they're competing, I'm sorry, people are going for the jugular in that environment.
Yeah,
have all the fun you can. Be a good sport. But the list you bring, you're going to a bar fight. I mean, you're winding up in an alley with broken glass and this is only one's coming out of the arena. Okay, so yeah. All right. Anyway, so this is great. I really, Tom, thank you so much for going over it. I want to put a challenge to you. I know that our schedules have been a little bit crazy, and I haven't had you on in a long time, so it's been a long time coming. And we've had some really good unlockings. I invite anybody who's enjoyed some of my recent unlockings to kind of go back over the last year, right around my 100 episode area or 120. I started doing more unlockings when I was around the time that AOS came out, and I did a whole series, and we did a bunch of them, and we had some really good ones. I'd like to do another one with you, and I'd like to dissect dwarves. Now, it may be a little bit jumping the gun because the rumor is that we might have some new dwarf stuff coming out. So we might have to circle back and do it again. But I've gotten some requests from people that want to see dwarves, and dwarves are a little bit of a sticky thing. So we can talk about this more. I'd love for you to do one. And when I'm going to be going on vacation this coming week, I'll be away for a week in the Caribbean and with my family. And when I come back, I'll go ahead and talk to you and we'll try to schedule that. But this was great. This was great. And I really want to. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. I want to invite anybody who's watching to go and send me lists. If you've got a collection for the build a list thing or any other ideas that you might have, feel free to comment on this. Tom, you got anything you want to talk about before we go ahead and wrap this up?
What I want to challenge those that are building lists for tournaments to consider is to consider what the scenarios are going to look like. And so some people may critique the lists that I put together, but I really want you to look at what the victory conditions are, what's going to net you points. Because things like mobility, having multiple heroes, those things are actually really important in order to score points in those events. And being able to form lists that can divide up onto multiple points. So I want you guys to think about those because I see a lot of lists floating around of like 2,000 point lists for competitive tournament, but they're not thinking about what happens when the models are actually on the table and they need to actually start bringing points in.
Yeah, I think there's a really good. That's a great point. I think that first of all, critiquing lists. I mean, come on, you can't ask people not to. They're going to do it. It's the internet.
Yeah.
But there's no wrong way to build. There's well, maybe. Well,
I would challenge that.
Let me dial that back. But there's so many right ways. Is really what I'm getting to.
Yep.
There's so many ways. Like you were just saying here, we pull out these 3 lists for 3 points. On almost each of them, you had alternates, options, things to swap out, to change. They could be different environmental changes. Who knows? Yep. Every event's going to be different. Every TO is going to be different. They're going to be different scenarios. They're not going to always be the ones for match play. The thing to consider that I think that you're highlighting is that you're going to have objectives to take. There might be different ways to take them and hold them or try to, grab them away from your opponent. It could be based on the heroes. It could be based on quantity models. It could be minimum quantity as opposed to just who has the most. You might have to have at least 5 in a unit in order to claim it. So those big models may wipe everybody off the board, but then you can't claim it. So there's a lot of things to consider. Where are they on the board? When they come into play? As we get more and more scenarios, and I'm getting a little bored myself right now with the 8 in the match playbook, and I'm looking out, and I encourage people to try and take a look out. There's hundreds of scenarios in just the scenario books that have been released, all the different battle tomes and source material that's been released just in the past year plus. Some of those work really well in match play. I encourage you to dream up your own, try and pull in some of those. Don't just stick to just the 8 ones from the match playbook, but they're really good examples of some scenarios really matter for the heroes, some matter for larger unit sizes. Whatever this case is, whatever the idea is, you're going to need a multifaceted force that's going to have to address many scenarios across different games, using different forces. Tom, look out, guys, everybody, if you don't know, and I'm sure if you're a follower of mine, you're a follower of Tom, you're a follower of Vince, you're a follower of a lot of the regular Warhammer YouTubers. Tom is, a regular on the Warhammer Weekly. Check him out. I'm going to put a link down below. If you don't know already, you should. And we're going to have you back on. Thanks again, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.